Ancient texts are being studied for any information concerning advanced magic, the latest information on the declassification on the JF Kennedy assassination files, starmaking in distant galaxies, and the latest on JP and his most recent update on going into a base where time travel technology is being helped by Nordic looking extraterrestrials, and he's giving a choice of whether or not he wants to go into four distant realms or time realms where ancient space arcs are studied.
You are listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla, your source for the uncensored truth regarding the human, extraterrestrial, global, and political agenda. Click the like button and subscribe to this channel. And now, here's Dr. Michael Salla.
Well, welcome to Exopolitics Today, the week in review. This is the week ending for July 8th, and we've got a few stories to cover, maybe not as much as we've been doing in the past, but definitely some that are well worth looking into. So let's switch over to my Twitter feeds. So now let's look at some of the stories. So here you have the last update, July 1st, and so now we look at this really intriguing development where there was a story concerning the study of ancient magic. So this is in the debrief. This is the same online magazine that broke the David Grush whistleblower testimony. So it is definitely getting a lot more attention. And here, as you can see, ancient magical texts to be studied in unprecedented depth by cadre of university professors. So why are university professors studying magic? Well, I think the reason is that there is a understanding that there is something happening in terms of a return of ancient beings, gods, if you like, extraterrestrials, multidimensionals, however you call them, that have this ability to utilize what we would consider to be magic. Now, whether Arthur C. Clarke's dictum applies that magic is just the way in which primitive peoples described advanced technologies. I mean, what we do know is that there are ancient texts describing events and processes that are being secretly studied in military and corporate laboratories. One of my sources, JP, the Army insider, he described going into a base where he was asked to look at these texts in terms of information on space arcs. So this was looking at ancient texts in terms of whether or not they have information on space arcs. So now what we're hearing from the debrief is that this also applies to magic. Now, why magic? Well, I think magic was something that was known and obviously studied by the ancients. And, there is a alchemical aspect to it. And if you go to books like the Book of Enoch, it describes the watchers, such as uh, those beings that regarded as fallen angels, that they actually were the ones that were showing or instructing humans in magic, and that led, according to the Book of Enoch, the destruction of civilization. Now, you might revisit the Book of Enoch and look at what was being taught as really just a companion to the release and study of advanced technologies, because that's also what was discussed in the Book of Enoch. So I think what we are seeing here is the kind of first public display that as we move into an era where advanced technologies will be declassified far in advance of our present level understanding and use of modern transportation, health, and energy technologies, that magic is going to play a role as well. So there's going to be these practices concerning magic which are relevant in some way to understanding these technologies. So that's the fascinating article and the debrief. So let's move on now to this really kind of like satirical video. Let's just. Floor, thank you for agreeing to meet with us today. So I'm as well. I'm giving you a chance to beg and plead for mercy before we destroy your planet is my favorite. The job, Dan? Okay, so very humorous. I mean, this is released by the Babylon Bee. Definitely worth subscribing and watching their videos. Always nice to have a little bit of laughter in your life, but this does address a serious issue, and that is not so much the kind of the different genders, the misgendering kind of like focus that we're seeing in a lot of Western society, which incidentally is kind of ignored in the BRICS nations and much of the world. But nevertheless, this is the latest form of Western imperialism is wokeness, which is ironic, of course, because a lot of those subscribing to the woke agenda, are anti-imperialist. But this is what we would call a hegemonic narrative that everyone needs to focus on gender and to kind of like understand the multiplicity of gender. So much of the world ignores this. Now, this particular satirical piece does bring up this issue that I think is important, which is exoracism. Now, if you haven't come across that term before, the first person to use that term was Dr. Stephen Greer, and he has the opinion that if you start talking about uh, beings such as greys or reptilians in a negative light, then you are an exo-racist. And that is kind of like very disturbing because racism is one of those hot button issues today that is really being pushed aggressively to ensure that any kind of racism is removed from the public sector, and that's fine. I mean, I see no problem with that. Now, of course, with affirmative action, that's very kind of controversial whether positive or reverse racism is acceptable. I personally don't think it's necessary at all. Maybe there was a day when it was, but now I think we're well beyond that. But nevertheless, racism is a very sensitive political topic. And so when people like Dr. Greer start to use that term, exo racism, and label those that are trying to distinguish between positive and negative extraterrestrials, I think we enter into very dangerous waters because I think we do need to be discerning. I do think we need to understand there are a multiplicity of extraterrestrial races out there, the good, the bad, the ugly, and we need to be discerning. Now, what Greer does, which I think is a disservice to the great work he's done otherwise in helping many whistleblowers come forward, is that he really wants us to kind of like just do this whitewash where no extraterrestrials are doing negative things on Earth. Anything negative happening on Earth is result of human corruption and our depraved state of consciousness, and we really need to lift our game up if we want to interact with these lovely positive extraterrestrials who are out there. And but he makes if we continue our bellicose, warmongering ways and project those into space, these very benign, benevolent extraterrestrials, they will defend themselves, they will retaliate. So that's his take, and I think that is really very superficial. There are a variety of models have, and we need to be discerning. We need to understand who are aggressive, who are benign and peaceful, who are deceivers. Just as anyone, if you move into a new city, And you go into that city thinking, well, New York City, wow, look at this. This is incredible. Look how advanced this is. And uh, huge skyscrapers, lots of people, lots of jobs, lots of opportunities. And you just have the attitude that, well, everyone in New York City, these are really kind of highly evolved beings. And you're going to find that you're going to be a target of some scam artist or go into the wrong neighborhood, and so you got to be discerning. And I think the same applies when it comes to extraterrestrial life. And certainly, I think Dr. Greer has done great work. But when it comes to exo-racism, I think he really does do um, damage to his reputation. So let's continue looking at my Twitter feed. Okay, so here was an announcement from Karine Jean Pierre that concerning the declassification of records from the JFK assassination. So let's listen to what she has to say.
Yeah, so I do have an update for you. As part of the Biden-Harris administration's continued commitment to government transparency and accountability, President Biden issued a memorandum today concluding the review of records from the all information related to President Kennedy's assassination should be released, except when the strongest possible reasons counsel otherwise. As a result, over 99% of the records in the collection are now publicly available at the National Archives, in keeping with the president.
Well, I'm going to stop it there because I mean the crux really is this idea that they're going to declassify the remaining records. I mean, we're talking 1963 to 2023. So we're talking nearly 60 years that there are still records that are classified. And she says that according to the Biden administration, that all records, except when the strongest possible reasons counsel otherwise. So, who's going to make that determination that the strongest possible reasons counsel otherwise? Who's going to come in with the case that, well, you need to keep this secret because this agency suffers? And here you have this quip by Greg Price, which I think is very, very pertinent. AKA the ones that show the CIA did it will not be released, and that's pretty much the case. That those files that the CIA considers uh, harmful to national security, or more correctly, to the reputation of the CIA, they're not going to be released. And I've written a book on the JFK assassination, the Kennedy's Last Stand, and it lays out the case for the CIA's role in the assassination. And I think when you look at all of the documents that are available, both leaked and official, I mean, there are also Freedom of Information Act documents that actually give specifics on how it is that the CIA was involved in the assassination of President Kennedy, and that the UFO issue was front and center, an important part of that process. So certainly, the CIA has a lot to worry about if all of the files are declassified. So hopefully that will happen sometime soon. Okay, so here's an interview I did with Tony Rodriguez concerning his new book, Project Starmaker. And what Tony says is that during his secret space program service as a slave on the planetoid Ceres in the asteroid belt, where he was part of a merchant marine wing of the Dark Fleet, and he's described that in his earlier book, Ceres Colony Cavalier. He says that at some point in that the Germans made a deal with a extraterrestrial civilization from another galaxy that was, believe it or not, seeking consciousness or soul extracts to be able to work in a star making project in this distant galaxy where the consciousness would transfer into a kind of a cloned, uh, asexual extraterrestrial body or an avatar. It would inhabit that avatar for 10, 20, 30 years, whatever would work, and then the consciousness would come back. So as far as Tony Rodriguez would be concerned, it's like his consciousness is put through an additional period of slavery, 10 years or more, and then he's returned to pretty much the same time when he was taken. So very intriguing that extraterrestrials would want to trade in consciousness or soul extracts and use a soul extract for a certain period of time. So this is kind of like really fascinating. Now, I remember back in the early 2000s when I began researching the work of Alex Collier. And Alex said that what the Andromedans often would do was that they would intercept the ships of the Dows, the Dow Greys, and he would say that they would find hundreds of these containers, and they would hold the soul extract of beings, of children, and that those soul extracts were being traded, sold. This was highly exportable, and that's what the Greys were doing. And so the Andromedans would come in, rescue those soul extracts, and the bodies presumably were eliminated, so they would treat them in a humane way. Now, I'm not sure if that meant just helping them find a new body, entering the reincarnational cycle. That's something Alex could maybe address. But I thought it was very interesting that there was this exposure of this kind of slave trade in soul extracts or consciousness. So this is really intriguing what Tony was describing, and he says that the Ceres colony Germans, the ones running that colony, they made a deal. They got something out of it, some sort of barter. They got something out of it, and Tony's there doing this slave trade or doing this star making, which involved him doing kind of pretty drudge routine work, where he's piloting a small spherical glass-like craft and just moving space rocks down a gravity well with the intention of accumulating sufficient mass that body of rocks that have all been kind of coalesced down a gravity well, that they begin to ignite to form a new stable star. And interestingly, he said that star would then be the basis for a ring to be built around it that would be habitable. And so this is how many civilizations do it. That rings around failed stars or stars are in fact colonies, habitats that have been built by extraterrestrials. So this is kind of like a Dyson's sphere, if you want to use that terminology. And that is very intriguing, because there was a book by Norman Bergram called Ringmakers of Saturn, where he described extraterrestrials building the rings of Saturn. And so I think this is intriguing, that this is actually very common practice in throughout our universe, many galaxies, that extraterrestrials will begin star making projects where where they build and ultimately they build habitats around stars or very large bodies like Saturn, because I mean Saturn is considered to be a failed star. So does that mean at some point it was actually a star, or that it was built by extraterrestrials to create this effect? I mean, very, very intriguing. So that's Tony Rodriguez's new book, Project Starmaker. So definitely worth taking a look at that. I recommend it. Okay, so this was a very intriguing story here. So this is okay. So why is U.S. Northern Command and the NORAD commander, that is General Glenn Van Herk, criticizing U.S. Space Command over an quote incredibly misleading quote unquote statement on nuclear missiles and tracking Santa Claus? Well, Santa Claus is a euphemism for UFOs. That's the way NASA and here we see some military commanders They use Santa Claus as this catch-all phrase for UFO targets. So General Van Herk wrote, criticized US Space Command for releasing a statement that was conceived to be totally deceiving and incorrect concerning the tracking of nuclear missiles and the tracking of Santa Claus. So here, for example, let's look at this. This is what Glenn Van Herk said. To be clear, the missile defense mission has not changed, he said in an interview Thursday. There's been no change to any of our missions, including the NORAD mission for missile warning attack assessment, any of those. And we're still tracking Santa Claus each year. Well, again, Santa Claus is code for extraterrestrial spacecraft. So he's upset with the Space Command commander, which is General General James Dickinson, making statements concerning the responsibility for tracking nuclear missiles and Santa Claus. And I think what's really behind this is that there is a battle for control over who is going to be the top dog when it comes to dealing with the UFO extraterrestrial issue as it applies to the United States. If for example, extraterrestrials or space invasion were to occur over the United States, would it be Northcom and NORAD that would be in charge, or would it be Space Command that would be in charge? And I think that's it. Ultimately, it boils down to that. That there are predictions that there's going to be some kind of false flag alien invasion happening at some point. And I think if something like that were to happen, it would be very important to work out, well, who has ultimate authority in North America for defending the US and Canada against space invaders? Northcom or Space Command? NORAD or Space Command? I think that's the root of the problem here, because there are plans, the deep state. I mean, I've interviewed a few people, done webinars on the false flag alien invasion scenario, and there is clearly a plan. Now, whether that plan to stage an alien false flag event goes forward, I mean, that's anyone's guess if that's going to happen. Some say yes. John D'Souza, Special Agent John D'Souza, 25 years FBI, he says yes, they're going to go ahead with it. Others say no, the deep state would never do it because it would be quickly exposed and they would be totally discredited. So, depending on which way you go, nevertheless, there is a plan for an alien false flag event. So, who has jurisdiction for defense of the United States? I think that's the basis for this struggle, or this kind of like war of words, if you like, between the Northcom NORAD commander Glenn Van Herk with his peer from Space Command, General James Dickinson. Okay, so all right, this is a very helpful discussion on the end of UFO secrecy. So, okay, so this is Weaponized, which is a kind of podcast featuring George Knapp and Jeremy Corbyn, and they discuss a range of UFO ET related issues. So the question is posed in this is whether or not the public is ready for the truth, and especially when it comes to ETs genetically creating humanity. Now, is the public ready for that? I mean, that's a really good question. George Knapp thinks not. Jeremy Corbyn takes the positive case that yes, they are. Well, I think that when we look at why isn't the public ready for disclosure, I mean, clearly it's by design. That is, this is a situation that was contrived by the deep state, where the public would be woefully unprepared for the arrival or the announcement or the unveiling of extraterrestrial spacecraft or space arcs. Space arcs. So this has been by design. And so I think to just continue the policy of non-disclosure, because that's what the deep state wants. I think what we need to do is to move forward with disclosure, knowing full well that there are going to be those that are going to really fight this, resist this tooth and nail. That they don't want. There's a lot of Christians, Muslims, Jews around the world, in particular the Abrahamic faiths, that have been conditioned to believe that there is this supreme being that created humanity, and that being transcends all of these other kind of gods or extraterrestrial civilizations, that humans were created by this supreme being. So then to find out that in fact humans were created by a multiplicity of extraterrestrials, and that there is no one supreme being. It's just that being that we call Yahweh is in fact a sky god, the sky god Enlil from the Anunnaki. That is something that would be deeply shocking to a lot of people. But nevertheless, I think this has to happen. But I thought it's a very intriguing issue to investigate, and I find generally the episodes uh, on Weaponized kind of fairly pretty informative. You do get a good roundup on the latest developments concerning whistleblowers. I mean, Jeremy Corbyn, George Knapp have worked extensively with Robert Lazar and his whistleblower testimony about what happened at Area 51. So I think that kind of common interest in reverse engineering projects is the great strength of this podcast. Okay, so let's move on. All right, well, here's an alleged Area 51 video of 3 orbs or spheres being flight tested. Now, this came out in 2014, 9 years ago. Now, there's a lot of debate about this, but let's just take a look at it. Let's have a look at it. Okay, well, you can see it playing there now. So okay, there you go. You can see it playing. I mean, the 3 UFOs there that are just flying across what appears to be Area 51, being flight tested. And interestingly, that I mentioned Bob Lazar, he was the first to say that there's a regular flight testing of UFO craft that are being tested or being reverse engineered, and this typically happened at night on a Wednesday night. So here you have 3 craft being tested. Now they look like spheres, they look like orbs. So that shows that some of these orbs, some of these spheres, I I think I think that this clearly shows that these are being tested, that these are reverse engineered craft, orbs, if you like, that some extraterrestrial civilization had and either bequeathed to the US military or corporations, or this was something that was recovered and reverse engineered. Nevertheless, you have these orbs, these spheres that have been reverse engineered, and they're being flight tested. So this is 2014. So now we come to this. Compare that with what happened in February of 2023, where you had those uh, orbs that were shot down over the United States, over North America, Canada, and northern US, and they were shot down along with the Chinese spy balloon. And of course, people were saying, "Well, we don't know what they are." This was the official position from NORAD. General Van Herk went on the record and said, "Well, we don't know what they are. They could be extraterrestrial. We don't know." Well, if we accept this video is authentic, and I don't see any reason why we shouldn't accept that that this is a genuine leaked video. I know it's controversial, but so is Bob Lazar. Virtually every whistleblower, every leaked video, every leaked document is controversial because there are a lot of paid shills out there that come out and will criticize something, say it's a fake. Prove it that it's not a fake. And no matter what you provide, no matter what evidence you provide, they say it's a fake, it's contrived, it's a hoax. And that's been going on for a lot of years. And the thing is, we know that that happens because there were leaked documents that NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden released that actually showed that there was a Five Eyes intelligence program for online covert deception, and that involved the UFO issue. So that there is a lot of deception concerning UFOs. So, and I think this is where we need to develop thick skins in this UFO exopolitical field. If you shy away from controversy, you're not going to get anywhere, because everything that is released is going to be controversial, because there are people whose job it is to stir up controversy, to criticize, debunk, cast doubt on anything genuine that is leaked. And I and many others, we look at these documents, or the in this case this video, and like, okay, it's possibly genuine, unless there's clear evidence of fraud, and I haven't found any evidence of fraud with this. The person who leaked it, Dave Rossi, Generation Z, or, well, sorry, he didn't leak it, but he just retweeted this. He does work with some very high level scientists within the black world of covert reverse engineering. And I think by him retweeting this, I think he's giving a nod in that direction, that this is genuine. These are reverse engineered orbs that are being flight tested 9 years ago. And this could be what is behind the recent sightings and shootdowns over the United States. Okay, so this was an article by Trevor Thick and Tyler Rogaway. They give a detailed review of foreign material exploitation programs. So that is recovered material that is built outside of the United States, that has been recovered either in the US or in the oceans or in friendly allies' territory, and that's returned to the US. And typically, these aerospace craft that are foreign have been taken to places like Wright-Patterson airfield in Dayton, Ohio, and that's where the study in reverse engineering is concerned, to study foreign material technologies. Now, this is where they do this. They give this review because their position is that when it comes to claims like made by people like David Grush and other insiders, that there are reverse engineering programs of retrieved extraterrestrial spacecraft, that sure, you've got these highly credentialed whistleblowers that are coming forward saying this is going on. And Trevor Thick and Rogaway are saying that is, there's no empirical evidence supporting that at the moment. But they say, nevertheless, there is a lot of evidence supporting the existence of these foreign material exploitation programs that have been around, going all the way back to the Second World War, involving places like Wright-Patterson. And that's fair enough. But where I took exception was where they just make the observation that that there is no empirical evidence for these non-Earth or off-world UFO craft crashing and being brought back into the United States. So, this is where I felt it was worth making the point, offering this friendly criticism that, look, I mean, if you're going to really explore this field of reverse engineering of extraterrestrial spacecraft that have crashed or been found on Earth, I mean, if you just focus on empirical evidence, I mean, really, I mean, you think that military and corporations are going to allow empirical evidence, hard evidence, to just float out there, to just like be made available, so that investigative journalists at places, at different news sites will just be able to analyze these. I mean, seriously, I mean, these are smart people, and they know that special access programs, they have a premium on security, and there's no way in the world empirical evidence would ever be allowed to just circulate out there publicly. Anyone circulating empirical evidence of say an unacknowledged special access program. This is a program that even members of Congress, apart from the Gang of Eight, the heads of the intelligence defense committees in both houses of Congress, that Gang of Eight, they might be read into an unacknowledged special access program, but all the other members of Congress, we're talking over 500 people, they're not read in. So they don't even know that that program exists. So you think really that we need to set a standard of empirical evidence to determine whether or not this exists? I think not. I think you need to really be serious here and not go for this kind of safe claim. I mean, everyone makes that claim. Well, there's no empirical evidence. There's no hard evidence for this. Of course not. It's an unacknowledged special access program. Get real. You got to look at the whistleblower testimonies. People are starting to look at that finally. But the next thing we need to start looking at is looking at the leaked documents and official documents. But there are both leaked and official documents concerning these reverse engineering programs. Projects Moondust, Bluefly, Interplanetary Phenomenon Unit, Majestic documents. All of these concern crash retrieval programs concerning extraterrestrial technologies. We've had a lot of really significant whistleblowers come forward. One that stands out is Sergeant Clifford Stone, 22 years, U.S. Army. He worked on Project Moondust and Bluefly. He was part of the crash retrieval teams. He gave first-hand witness testimony. He was part of the FOIA requests for a lot of documents concerning some of these projects, and eventually it was acknowledged that Project Moondust and Bluefly existed. Similarly, the Interplanetary Phenomenon Unit also was involved in some of the very first crash retrieval programs. The Majestic documents. You have to look at these things, and let's not go for that kind of that position that, well, these are controversial documents. These have not been verified officially. Of course not. I mean, we're talking about unacknowledged special access programs. You want to know the truth? Get your hands dirty. Don't just go for empirical evidence, and that's the only thing we're going to discuss. Look at the whistleblowers. Look at the leaked documents. Look at the FOIA documents. And look at any other sources of information. Remote viewing. That is an important source of information. Contactee reports, another source of information. You've got to have a multifaceted approach to this, to exopolitics. And people, I'm just so sick and tired of people saying, well, we need to focus on the empirical evidence. Otherwise, it's anyone making this claim that these are alien reverse engineered projects. That's just conspiracy theory. No, we need to kind of like evolve, and that means looking at all of the data and not getting stuck in just hard evidence and empirical data. Okay, so this goes to my update on Thursday, July 6th, which is JP talking about the US military working with Nordics in time travel research. So this is a really interesting update. And he was taken with 5 personnel to an undisclosed location. That these were people that were multilingual from different nations, and they were taken to a location where there were 4 time travel devices, kind of like shaped in the way of a garage, a hemisphere-shaped open garage, where one end would be the event horizon. And you would walk through that event horizon and you end up either in 2090, 2050, 1940, or 1550. And there were teams going through these event horizons to go back or forward in time to find out everything they could concerning space arcs. Now, in my book, US Army Insider Missions, I actually talk about JP being taken into the future, 100 years into the future. And he got to see space arcs being used, that the future humans were using space arcs for survival, that the Earth had undergone some catastrophic series of events and people were surviving on space arcs. Now, naturally, I think the US military, the intelligence community would be very interested in such reports. Is it true? So, so yeah, having these kind of reconnaissance missions going into the future or the past to learn about what may happen and what has happened in the past, uh, and to find out whether or not the past and future can be altered. This is something that JP discusses in our interview. And what was very interesting in this interview was that he said that he was offered a 10-year and back time travel mission, that he would go into one of these periods for 10 years and then he would come back soon after the time he left. So as far as his family is concerned, he just left. He just came back. He went to work that morning, came back in the evening, no big deal. Um, that's the normal routine for JP, being a military, being in the US military. But in that day, of course, he went on this mission, spent 10 years at a different time period, and came back just an hour or two after he left. He gives a debrief, or maybe he's just sent home to be reunited with his family. And as far as JP is concerned, 10 years has elapsed for him. He's 10 years older, unless something is done to kind of do the reverse aging. He didn't say anything about that other than saying that he would be 10 years older, and that could create problems. I mean, you can imagine if his wife and children see him coming back that afternoon, he's just come back from work, but he looks 10 years older. It's like, what happened? You must have had a terrible day. So yeah, very interesting. But he didn't volunteer for that mission. It was a voluntary mission. And well, what's up with JP now? Of course, I've written the book, my first volume on JP, US Army Insider Missions. That's just come out. It's available on Amazon and Lulu. And book 2 will be coming out September, October by the latest. But that'll be out. So why is JP being exposed to all these missions? I state the case quite clearly in the book that this is part of the condition for him being part of the joining the US military, is that he would be allowed to disclose. But that JP has been working with Nordic extraterrestrials since 2008. I give all the history of my conversations, interviews with JP going back to 2008. And when he joined the military, that was in 2019, and it was done on the condition that he would be allowed to disclose what's happening in these secret space programs. And he's been allowed to do that because that's part of the condition for the Nordics collaborating with the US military. So why would the US military do that? Well, for one, the Nordics are helping them on advanced projects such as this time travel project. So the Nordics are giving help with that, and Nordics are helping with the reverse engineering of advanced spacecraft. So the Nordics are helping the US military technologically to build things and to understand a lot of things, such as the time travel research and future possibilities. And in return, the Army and the Air Force in particular are allowing JP to be given access to a wide range of missions, whether it's to underground locations in the US, whether it's to space arcs in the Atlantic Ocean, to underwater civilizations in the Atlantic, whether it's to off-planet locations such as the moon, Ganymede, deep space. JP's being given access to a lot of these things because I think he is part of the officially sanctioned disclosure process that is underway. So that's the latest interview with JP that has come out. Now, I will be traveling, so this week in review is coming out earlier. Even though you get it on Saturday morning, this is being recorded a little bit earlier. So any developments since this video comes out is going to be covered in my next week in review. So that brings this week in review to a close. I want to thank you for being part of this, supporting my exopolitics research. There's a lot of internet censorship happening, so definitely like and share this video. That's the way you can break the censorship that's happening, because the algorithms are definitely having an impact. Because even though I've noticed that my subscriber rate is going up, the number of people viewing the videos is starting to go down, and I'm noticing that this is probably part of some algorithm to stop these videos being seen by people. So click like, share, and of course subscribe and get notifications for these YouTube videos when they come out, or whatever platform you're viewing this on, same thing. So again, thank you for listening, and aloha.
You have been listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Join or start a conversation in the comments. Take the time to explore the vast library of best-selling books, webinars, and podcasts by Dr. Salla. Visit exopoliticstoday.com.